I'm going in very short because this is the topic of complete Gyan Yoga. But to know at this time is absolute necessary before we can proceed with the verse 12. Okay.
तो प्रभु आप इसमें जो बात कर रहे हैं वो सिर्फ दुख का बात कर रहे हैं कि मीन्स जो दुख का अनुभव है उससे नॉलेज होता है.
नहीं
हाउ
नहीं
अबाउट
नहीं नहीं hold on. The suffering is the profound cause for the exploration of knowledge. The attempt to alleviate the suffering puts us in the situation where we are ready to get some knowledge. And what we are trying to do after that is to create a different situation by knowing how can I alter this situation so that I can avoid the distress. And that process, which takes us from the unexpected suffering condition situations to a situation which is conducive to my enjoyership tendency, that process involves some level of knowledge. Okay, go ahead with your question now.
आप समझ में आ गया बिकॉज आई वाज लिटिल कंफ्यूज कि व्हाई
Okay.
ओनली ग्रीफ एंड डिस्ट्रेस.
Okay. In the case of pleasure, that desire does not come into effect because the enjoyership tendency is perfectly in line with the situation. Okay. Now, understand this concept of what is suffering and what is a pleasure. In the very short, I can tell you that an expansion in the ego is called pleasure, and the contraction in ego is called distress. Okay, just keep this thought with you, and with this thought, always judge if this is a situation of a distress or a pleasure. If a situation allows me to expand my ego, the jiva feels happy. The situation where ego starts to contract, the jiva feels distressed. Okay. Now, when for a jivatma which is um, which is interested in gaining knowledge of the sansar, or a subset of the whole jagat which he has created for himself, the means of knowledge is called praman. There are seven seven kinds of praman, but we'll talk the top five, because the other twos are little vague at this stage.
So Praman
So
Prabhu, is it about proof we are talking about, or it's
praman is the means of knowledge, how we
okay?
know of something. The first praman is called pratyaksh praman.
Okay.
Pratyaksh praman is gained through the five sense acquiring organs. It is perceptional. What I see, I know. What I hear, I know. What I can touch, I know. The second the second means of knowledge is called anuman. This is inferential. I infer something from my previously acquired knowledge base. Like, I know I have seen in Pratyaksh that smoke comes out when I burn something. So, if I see smoke somewhere where I don't see fire, I can use Anuman to know there must be fire. That is Anuman. So I know there is a fire somewhere. The third means of knowledge is called Upman. It is by comparison. I don't know about object X, but object X seems to feel, know, smell like object Y, which I am quite familiar of. So I know X as well. This is Upaman. Okay. The next is Arthapatti. Arthapatti is used when I have two conflicting truths. Two conflicting truths, not fact. Let me digress a little bit. Keep this Arthapati with you and remind me when I cover the come back to this place. Tell me the difference between fact
Fact
and
and truth.
truth. In
Mm,
Sanskrit, it is called Tathya and Satya.
okay. Tathya or fact can be for a situation. It's situational, whereas truth is always truth. I mean, it's what it is. So one is
Anybody else?
circumstantial, and one is does not depend on the circumstance. It's independent of circumstance.
Any, anybody? Is Mataji there?
No,
No,
Alka will be
not
joining
there.
us in some time. वो शाश्वत को लेने गई है ट्यूशन से.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. So in Nyaya, Tathya and Satya are explained. Okay. Um, Tathya is that profound intrinsic element of an object. Okay. And truth, Satya, is individual's understanding of that element.
Okay, it's the other way around.
Okay.
Mm.
In other words, fact, tathya, is unchangeable. Truth depends on individual's understanding of that element. Since individuals' understandings are dependent on individuals' knowledge, so truth varies by individuals. Okay? Now, tathya is the creator's perspective.
Mhm.
Satya is observer's perspective. A flower which is white as it was created could be visible as black or red or blue depending on which color glass I'm using to see that flower. Perspective of the observers will be different, but the tathya does not change, will not change. When the individual is able to coincide his understanding about Tat and Satya, when individual's perspective becomes same as the creator's objective or perspective, the observer or the individual is said to be in knowledge. The true knowledge allows the jiva to see an object as it is, as it was created. For that individual, for that jiva, his satya becomes the tatya. The objective of the knowledge is to remove the distance between tatya and satya. And the method or the means to acquire that knowledge is called praman. And that's what we are learning.
Mhm.
Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we were at Upaman.
Correct.
Or no, sorry,
Oh,
Arthapati.
Arthapati. Yes.
So when two conflicting statements are made and none could be false, then Arthapatti is the means to gain knowledge from both the statements without negating either of them. Is this clear?
So Arthapati is kind of a way how we differentiate between the two, or how is it?
So it's a means by which I make sense out of two statements which are mutually negatable.
Mhm.
If I believe on statement 1, statement 2 must be false. And if I believe on statement 2, statement 1 becomes false. But what I know is none of them can be false.
Hmm.
So I will have to find a mean to, to extract meaningful information from both of them without negating either of them. For example, if one parent of a kid says, my kid does not eat in the night, and the other parent says, my kid has become fat. Now, it sounds ridiculous that if somebody who does not eat in the night or in the day, but the kid is getting fatter, there is something not right here. So
Hmm.
when one parent says my kid does not eat during the day or during the night, and the other parent says he's getting fatter, I can, if I understand the statement 1 to be true, the statement 2 has to be false. But statement 2 has to be, for the statement 2 has to be true, statement 1 has to be false. In this
Mhm.
case, I need another means of knowledge about this, object. And when I
Mm-hmm.
get that means, I know that when one parent was telling me that he's fat, the kid is fat or getting fatter, and the other parent is telling me that the kid is not eating during the day, I think the kid was eating quite a lot during the night, and that's why he's getting fatter. So, this information that the kid was eating in the night, this is a mean of knowledge to, to gain more information about the object without negating either statement. It is called arthapatti.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the fifth is anupalabdhi. Okay. Anupalabdhi is used when we try to gain knowledge by absence of something. It's called anupalabdhi. Like if there was no traffic on the road, I can know that it might be weekends or holidays. It is called anupalabdhi. Okay. In the context of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan uses many times pratyaksha and anuman. He uses very rarely, he uses anuman. Arthapatti and anupalabdhi he does not use at all. Okay. The problem with these means of acquiring knowledge is that these means of knowledge only works on objects, and since our context is self, which is not an object, then what it is? It is subject itself. It is the witness. It is the seer. It is the knowledge gainer. So, none of these five methods of means of getting knowledge will work on self, because self is not an object, it's the subject only. For example, cannot see my eyes. So, a subject cannot see itself. I cannot see itself. To know the I, myself, the self, to know the I has to know I by itself. And that's when the means of knowledge that is used is called scriptures or the knower of the scripture. For example, if my eyes have to see itself, I use a mirror. For the self to know itself, it has to use a mirror. And that mirror is the scriptures or the knower of the scriptures. And that is called Shabd Praman. Okay? Is this clear?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So, uh, I think for the verse 12, mm, Yeah, I think for the verse 12, this much information about knowledge should be good enough. More of more knowledge about knowledge will be out of the scope of Bhagavad Gita. It comes in Vedanta only. Okay,
Okay.
so let's stay on track if you don't want to digress.
ठीक है प्रभु.
So in this 2.12, let's start 2.12. Is the whatever we have discussed about the knowledge, is that clear completely, isn't it?
Yes, Prabhu. So far,
Okay,
good.
okay. Um, this 2.12, I'll start speaking and see if you can repeat it if possible.
Mm-hmm.
Natvevaham jatu nasam,
नत्वे वाहम जातु नासम
natvam neme janadipah,
न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपा
na chaiva na bhavishyamah,
न चैव न भविष्यामः
sarve vayamatah param.
सर्वे वयमतः परम्.
Okay. So, in the last verse, Bhagavan gave a little bit of hint that you are definitely something which is not this body. And that's why when this body is going to be destroyed, or this body is not functional in the same capacity as it is, there is no reason for distress. For example, if I see somebody now and the person is, say, 10 years old, young, black hair, no beard, no glasses, and I see the same person after 60 years. The person is old, weak, wears glasses, gray hair, gray beard. Now, if I just look at the person by the superficial appearance, it's completely different, doesn't look the same. But the person who has lived with that person for these 60 years, that person is going to tell me, no, it's the same person. That means even in the practical language, in the Vyavharik language, we all understand that we truly are not this body. That's why we can say, it is my son. Why? Because the son, when it was born, it was so little, so different behaviors. Now, 50 years old, my son looks completely different, but I still call the same son my son. So, even I, without knowing, unconsciously, I have this knowledge that I, others, are something beyond this physical appearance. Is that true?
Yes, Prabhu.
So, Bhagavan takes this slowly in that direction and tells to Arjuna, Aham jatu na asam iti natu ev. If you think I am destructible or I was not in particular time, then that's not true. Okay? Then Bhagavan says, Tvam jatu na asi, the jatu na asih iti Na. That means even when you think you were not going to be there, that's not true. That means in the first line, whatever we have read as of now, as I was reading the Anvaya of that, that there has never been a time that you were not there. Bhagwan here is telling two parts of the past. Okay, one part is that which is the span of time when this body was alive but is past, and a time when the body was not even there. It's before the birth of this body. And if I combine these two, Bhagavan is saying there has never been a time when you weren't there. You were there when you had this body in different form, and you were even when this body wasn't there. Is this clear?
Yes, Prabhu.
Then Bhagavan says, Ime janadhipa jatu na asan iti na. Same way, these janadhipa, these kings were not there, not true. Then he says, Atah param cha vayam sarve na bhavishyama iti na ev. That means, so there will not be a time when you, me, or these will not be there. Okay? In fact, Bhagavan, what the gist of this is, Bhagavan is saying, is all that you see was there when you were able to see, was there when you were not able to see them. Same way, these, me, you, and all these, they will be there when you might see them. They will be there when you might not see them. Okay. Now, in this context, Bhagavan uses the word Vayam, means all of us in plural sense. And this plural sense is to denote these different physical bodies only. Okay?
Hmm?
That's what Bhagavan says, Vayam. Okay? Now, let's understand a little bit about what. So what we have is we have divided the past into two parts, and we have divided future into two parts. The past first part is this body was there, and the second part was this body wasn't there. For the future, there is a part which says this body will be there, and the second part, this body will not be there. Bhagwan combines the two parts of past, and the Bhagwan combines the two parts of the future together. Okay. Now we'll try to study this into three different parts. Before that, let me tell you in this verse, Bhagwan, surprisingly, you say, never talks about the present. You see that? He says, there has never been a time when you went there. There will not be a time when you will not be there. He doesn't say You are here or you are not here. Okay. It is explicitly removed the present concept. And it's because the fault in the Jivatma. No Jivatma can truly experience present moment because the moment, the kal, moves always. It is never stays silent or quiet. It always moves. It is never stagnant. Okay. So by the time a Jivatma feels and knows the moment has already become past. So when you know the moment, that moment does not exist anymore. It's gone. So for the true Jivatma, there is
It's
nothing
impossible.
called present. The perception of present does not exist for a Jivatma in the conditioned state. Okay? Is this clear? Can I move it?
So you said in a conditioned state, which means
Yes.
in a different state, it is there. Or I
So
thought it's only the Bhagwan who can see it, no one
in
else.
in the conditioned state, that means when the jeev is as jeev, that means when the soul is covered by agyan, it becomes jeev. That agyan, as long as the agyan is covering that soul, that jivatma can never perceive present. When the
Got it?
when that soul cross crosses the scope of agyan, then that soul can perceive everything in present, because the soul's swarup, the intrinsic nature is Sat Chit Anand. It is eternal, it is all knowing, and it is in bliss. All knowing means it is it knows everything about this creation regardless of time. When something transcends time, the concept of past, present, future is negated completely. Same thing is for Bhagwan. Because for the Bhagwan is transcendental to Kal. For him, there is no past, there is no present, there is no future. Bhagwan uses the word past and future so that Jeev can understand, because Jeev is always under the realm of Kal. So for the Jeev, past, future is there. Is this clear?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So, mm, okay. The the stage. So I was saying we are going to divide this time into three different parts. Okay. The first part of an entity is when the entity has some kind of shape or form or something that is perceivable by knowledge acquiring organs. Okay. The body happens to be one of those. So, from the start of the creation of this body to the end or complete destruction of the body, this is one phase. Before the creation of the body is another phase, and after the destruction of this body is another phase. Okay, before the creation of this body, or before the creation of any object, is called prag abhav, and after the destruction of an object, it is called dhvans abhav. Every object in this creation has prag abhav and dhvans abhav. The difference between these two could be smaller, longer, anything. But as long as there is an object in this creation, even this creation has a prag abhav and dhvans abhav. This Brahmand has a prag abhav and dhvans abhav, because before the creation of this Brahmand or this body, it was not there. It had prag abhav. And after the destruction, this body will have prag abhav, dhvans abhav. Okay? So Bhagavan says, you do not have prag abhav and you do not have dhvans abhav. What does that mean? That means you were never created and you will never be destroyed. Because before the creation is called prag abhav, and after the destruction is called dhvans abhav. If you do not have dhvans abhav and prag abhav, that means you were never created, you'll never be destroyed. What does that mean? That means you are continuous fetch across. That means you are an entity which truly is transcendental to Kal. Okay? Is this clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So Bhagavan says that you truly are Anant, eternal. So am I. And all these kings who are here, all of us are truly eternal. Now let's understand what eternality means. Okay? What does eternality means?
Which is there forever. As you said, which is never created, nor destroyed, or can be destroyed.
Okay, so eternality actually means infinite. Okay, there are three kinds of infinitude which makes anything eternal. Okay, three kinds of infinitude. Every object in this creation has three limitations. Okay, and something which does not have three kinds of limitations is called eternal. So the first unlimitedness that has to be there with that entity is called kal aparikched. Okay, that means something which is not limited by time. This we talked about that which does not have prag abhav and Dhvansabhav. It is beyond time. The next infinitude that has to be there with the object or the entity is sthan apariched. Sthan apariched says there is no place in this entire creation where this entity does not exist. So, if I call self, the Atman, to be eternal, that means this Atman pervades every space in this entire creation. This is called sthan apariched. And the third unlimitedness that this entity must have to be called an eternal is called vastu apariched. This entity is every object in this entire creation. There is no object in this creation that this entity is not. On a lower scale, the example that I can give you is if I have thousands and thousands of clay pots, clay toys flying everywhere, what I can say is this is what I can say is clay is everywhere. Every object is pervaded by clay because this clay itself is clay pot, clay toy, other clay pot, other clay toy, all of them. Same way, this soul is every object in this creation. There is no object in this creation which this soul is not. So, an entity which has three levels of unlimitedness, Kala apariched, Sthana apariched, and Vastu apariched, is called eternal. Is this clear?
So, which means it has to have anything that is eternal, has to have these three qualities, limitations.
Unlimitedness. Yes.
Unlimited. Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
So, what Bhagavan said is all of us, Vayam, are eternal. That means all of us have the nature of Kal apariched, Sthan apariched, and Vastu apariched. We truly are not limited by the three dimensions of this material world. And there are only three dimensions in this material world: Kal, Sthan, and Vastu. Time, space, and matter. Just three. Okay? Is this clear up to this point?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Now, mm, let me see what else is to be discussed in this. Oh, okay. So, the same thing is discussed, the eternality of individual soul is discussed in many Upanishads. In Kathopanishad, it says that you are the eternal. Actual words, let me tell you. Yeah, so it says, Eko vashi sarvabhuta antaratma, ekam rupam bahudhayah karoti, tamatmastham yenu pashyanti dhira, tesham sukham shashvatam netaresham. Nityo nityanam, chetanam, eko bahudam yo vidadhati kaman, तमात्मस्थम येनु पश्यन्ति धीराः तेषां शांति शाश्वती नेतरेषाम. It says that the wise see that eternal soul within itself, within its heart. For that wise, the eternal joy and eternal peace is guaranteed. In another Upanishad, for the soul, it says the sons of immortal bliss. All men are referred to by this expression, the sons of immortal bliss. It says every living soul is immortal. There are many places in the Upanishad which confirms this in from different perspective, but it truly is accepted throughout the Upanishads. Okay, so in this verse, as we talked, the first line talks about prag abhav pratiyogitvam, and the second line says dhvans abhav apratiyogitvam of the soul. The soul does not have prag bhav or dhvans bhav. That's confirmed in the the two lines. Any question, comment?
No, Prabhu.
Okay. Okay. So now let me digress a little bit from here and ask this. Now, since we have discussed that this soul, which is eternal, which has unlimitedness in time, space, and matter, then why do I say I am happy, I am dreaming, I am sleeping? That eternal cannot change, because change is the result of being in the context of time. Something that is an object to time or is controlled by time can only change. If I, the self, who is eternal, who is beyond the control of time, then how could I change? Then why do I say I am happy, I am sleeping, I am angry, I am not happy, I am happy? Why do I say that? How could I change?
Or maybe I am not changing at all.
You cannot
It's
be eternal. Then why do I say I am happy, I am sad, I am okay, I'm not okay, I'm sleeping, I'm walking? How could I be changing? I cannot change. I'm unchanging. I cannot change. I
That's the
am not in control of time, so I cannot change at all. Go ahead, bro. Sorry.
uh, correct. तो
Did you say something?
माता जी कह रही हैं जीवात्मा है, जीवात्मा कैन डू दैट, बट आत्मा इज डिफरेंट. तो जो इटर्नैलिटी है दैट्स फॉर आत्मा एंड नॉट फॉर दिस शरीर. शरीर which is saying that we are happy, I am happy, or I am not happy.
So we discussed this in last class that who feels happiness is not the body, because the body is dead matter. Dead
So
matter cannot be happy. Dead matter cannot be sad. A stone outside on the street cannot be happy or cannot be sad. This body cannot be happy. This body cannot be sad. This body cannot be walking. This body cannot be sleeping. Stones don't sleep. Correct?
we said that it's our ego that makes us feel it, believe it.
So the ego in the container of intelligence feels, and we talked that the contraction and the expansion of ego is the reason of distress or happiness. Now, when we say I am okay, I am sad, okay, who am I referring to? I am referring to something that is changeable. I'm not referring to something that is unchanging. I am unchanging, but I am referring to something which is changeable. What is that changeable? That is ego. Now, we talked last time that what this ego is. Remember that?
Yes. Mhm.
So, tell me what this ego is.
वासना जिसे बोलते हैं ना हम लोग हिंदी में.
Okay. The vasana or the impressions or the sanskars are actually the cause of desire. Ego is not desire. Okay. And ego is not vasana, impression, or sanskar. Okay. Ego is the reflected image of the self reflected from the mind.
तो इसको हिंदी में क्या बोलेंगे?
अहम अहंकार अहम मैं.
ईगो को हिंदी में एक्चुअल वर्ड इज अहंकार, बट हाउ अहंकार इज क्रिएटेड and how why ahankar exists is because of the mind. And it's the mind, as we discussed last time, when it reflects the consciousness original consciousness reflects that reflected consciousness creates the image of self in the mind. That image is ego. And because the mind keeps on changing, mind is a continuous flow of thought. Since the media itself, the reflecting media itself keeps on changing every moment, the shape of ego keeps on changing. And it's that ego which mind identifies itself as itself. So the mind says, I am happy. When it sees, it feels the image, reflected image, to be expanding. It says, I am happy. But now think, say, when I say I am happy, I am sad, who is saying that? And who is feeling that? We talked about who is feeling that. Now think of who is seeing the I, happy I. Who is seeing the unhappy I? That seer, that witness is the eternal soul. It is the witness. And what is seen is the contracting and expanding ego. Is this clear?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So, in total, this verse confirms the eternality of soul, and it removes any misconception about limitedness of soul. The only three dimensions that is available in this material world, the dimensions of time, space, and matter, the soul is beyond those three dimensions. I think that should be it for this verse. Any
That should
question,
be.
comment, concern? Yeah, you were saying, sorry. Go ahead.
नहीं वो लास्ट वर्ड आपका समझ में नहीं आया. You said that should be it for.
For this verse,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So that I will say that the takeaway from this verse is to know for good that the three limitations caused by the three dimensions are not applicable to the soul: time, space, and matter. Nothing affects the soul. When we read outside Bhagavad Gita, we'll know that the three dimensions are actually the effects of soul itself. Okay? It's the soul that creates time, space, and matter. In fact, the soul creates the components which make time, space, and matter. Okay? So, just the eternality of the soul, that is the best thing that we can understand from this verse. Now, you remember we were talking about the means of knowledge. In the
Yes,
means
Prabhu.
of knowledge, as it pertains to the understanding of self, this verse starts that knowledge base for us. Okay. Now, the knowledge, when the assimilation of the knowledge, okay, has three steps to it. Okay. The first step, I think we talked about this, or not, I don't remember it. The first step of the that is assimilation is Shravanam. The first step is Shravanam. Okay. Shravanam is the stage where this knowledge is acquired by listening from somebody who knows it, or we just read it from the scriptures. So the source of Sravanam could be the teacher, the scripture, or the rishis. Okay. The next stage of assimilation is called Mananam. And in this stage, what we do is whatever we have heard or acquired the knowledge, that knowledge is questioned within. And after the questioning, I create a strong personal, unshakable conviction about the knowledge in myself. Okay? After this knowledge becomes my true conviction to live, in the third stage, which is called Nididhyasan, I meditate on that conviction. The conviction, what happens is, I try to be an impartial auditor of my actions. I start scanning every action of myself on the lens of the knowledge that I have acquired. And I mark them. This is right behavior, wrong behavior. And I try to ignore or not do any behavior which I know that this is a wrong behavior because of that knowledge which I have acquired. That means in the stage of Nididhyasan, I change my life. I change myself. In other words, I try to change my thinking by gaining more and more knowledge about myself. At the stage of Nididhyasan, I try to change my mind, motivate my mind. I try to mold my mind so that the flow of uncontrollable thoughts in my mind becomes manageable. And when the thoughts become manageable, it is easier for me to scrutinize each and every thought that I have. The aim of the knowledge of the self is to transform us, the self. And as we talked, the purpose of the knowledge is to reduce the gap between what is a tathya and what is satya. The tathya is I am that eternal soul. Satya is that I am this body, I am changing, I am happy, I am sad. This is always happy, it never becomes sad. Yes, this has nothing to do with this guy at all. When my Satya through the knowledge comes closer to the Sat, to the Tatya and becomes one, I will be situated in the knowledge. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Any question?
No, none so far.
See, I'm not going to ask you any question. If you don't have any question, then so be it. Because I'm not going to ask you any question. You should know what you know you don't know.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I just remember one very good point about the knowledge of the self is that the world of knowledge is divided into two parts. Okay, what I know and what I don't know. Okay, what I know and what I don't know. There is nothing in the world of knowledge beyond these two sets. Correct? And none of this covers the Atman, the self, because what I know and what I don't know is with the perspective of the self. Is the self that knows or does not know. That means this knowledge which is known and the knowledge that is unknown is about an object or objects. This is the subject. We are trying to know the subject, not objects.
Yes, Prabhu.
I think I don't have anything to say in 2.12. I mean, I can digress in different direction, but to stay in focused with this verse, I think there is not much for me to talk.
Hmm.
You can say anything if you have anything to share, please.
I'm just thinking. You said you can digress. I was thinking इसके अलावा भी इसका मतलब बहुत कुछ है जो we have
Correct, correct,
not out.
correct. So this whatever we have discussed as of now about 2.12 is with very little digression so that we can understand what Bhagwan was telling. Remember, I said what Bhagwan was telling, but it did not cover what Bhagwan meant by doing all these things. The difference happens when who is the speaker and who is the listener. The knowledge of the listener is used as a base to establish knowledge on top of that. And in this case, Arjun was not a common man like me and you. Arjun himself was a sage. He had all the knowledge of scriptures. Bhagwan, what is he's doing is trying to use his knowledge base and give it back to him so that he could come out of the state of distress. Bhagwan is not giving him the knowledge. He's just reminding of his knowledge and establishing that there is no reason for distress. Bhagwan is not teaching him Vedanta. He already knows Vedanta. That's the difference. So, if we understand Vedanta and then we come and read this verse, we read it completely differently. Okay? So, how we read as of now is as much as we can read without knowing what Vedanta is. Arjun was very fluent in Veda, Upanishad, and Puran. So Bhagwan is not teaching him Veda, Upanishad, or Puran. Bhagwan is just picking the piece which is useful at this present moment so that Arjun could come out of that state of distress. That's it. So the perspective is completely different as we read and as from the perspective of how Bhagwan was trying to use this information. None of this information was unknown to Arjuna. It's the pick and choose of meaningful information which makes the net on which Arjun can stand on his feet to fight. That's what is being done by Bhagwan here. Bhagwan is not giving him the knowledge of Veda, Upanishad, or Puran. You see the difference in the perspective?
Yes.
Okay.
Now we do.
प्रभु जी, अर्जुन ने ये आगे नॉलेज किसी को क्यों नहीं दिया, शेयर क्यों नहीं किया? जैसे नहीं, जैसे पहले की वो मनु ने विवस्वान को दिया, फिर वो मनु को दिया, फिर मनु ने इक्ष्वाकु को दिया, तो
अर्जुन
अर्जुन ने आगे क्यों नहीं किया?
अर्जुन क्षत्रिय था, अर्जुन ब्राह्मण नहीं था। अर्जुन का काम नहीं था नॉलेज आगे देना।
अच्छा,
I don't know what is the reason. I बताना मुश्किल है. But it is what it is. We must know that we should come as close to Arjuna as possible in our scope and then try to understand this. Only then we can understand the true meaning of this speech.
Okay.
Isn't it? And what we are doing is at the empty slate we are writing this and trying to read. Definitely the true purpose cannot be realized, isn't it? That's why as much as possible without digressing too much, I try to give you some understanding of the other scriptures which are extremely necessary for our true meaning of these messages. Hmm.
Yes, Prabhu.
So in short, we must gain knowledge to make sense out of knowledge. And as we talked in the last discussion, that since Bhagwan saw the cause of his distress to be related to Swadharma and Swakarma, and that's why Bhagwan started with what is Swayam. And this is one angle of explaining, one perspective of from the Bhagwan's side to explain him or remind him about what self is. And slowly, while explaining what self is, Bhagwan will try to dispel his true cause of distress, which was love of living body. At this time, loving the living body of his relatives and things. So the attachment of living and body. And when we go for further, probably 3, 4, 5 more verses, you will see that every verse is focused on explaining attachment, what is living and what is body. This verse, Bhagwan is talking about the living part of it. In the next verse, Bhagwan will talk about what is body. And then Bhagwan will talk about the attachment. And eventually, Bhagwan will use these 3 words and explain him that attachment with living body does not make sense after you understand what is living and what is body. Hmm?
Yes, Prabhu.
That's it. If you have read anything else about this, please share if you can.
नहीं, इस वर्स के बारे में तो और कुछ नहीं पढ़े.
Good, good, good. Any other not much digressing question?
खाली ये तीसरा पूछना था, हम लिख रहे थे तो I missed it. ये
Okay.
simulation of knowledge has 3 steps. So one we said Shravanam, Maranam, and what was the
Shravanam,
third?
Mananam, and Nididhyasan.
Nividhyasan.
Nididhyasan. Nididhyasan.
निधि
निदिध्यासन. जैसे नदी
निधिध्या
होता है ना, निदिध्यासन.
निधिध्यासन. Okay. निधिध्यासन.
Okay. So Sravanam is can be correlated with food in the plate. Mananam is eating that food, and Nididhyasan is digesting that
Yes.
food. After the digestion, that food becomes power, strength in the body. The body changes after the food. The knowledge should make transformation everlasting.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the stage of Nididhyasan, um, the constant state of meditation has to be learned to be. And there are 6 stages of meditation which somebody has to learn. It's not the regular yoga or pranayama I'm telling you about. So there are 6 stages of meditation that has to be learned. Only then we can procedurally advance in the assimilation of knowledge into life. Because the purpose is that this knowledge should transform things in me which will go to the next life. If the change in this, if the change in me is at the level which will be left here in this life, after this life, then I did not achieve much. It did not do everlasting change in me. The aim to learn something about myself, the self, the Atman, is to make that transformation, which is life, not just lifelong, is beyond this life. When it's beyond this life, in the next life, I can start from that stage. But if my knowledge stayed at this the level which is not going to be taken to the next life, in every life I'm going to start from scratch only. What did I achieve by doing that? Nothing, isn't it? I mean, I won't say nothing, but not much. Correct?
Yes. Yes, Prabhu.
So in the study, in the process of gaining knowledge about the Atman, one thing is suggested, one practice is suggested is learn few, assimilate all. Because it's that assimilation which is going to be useful in next subsequent lives and lives to me. Without the assimilation, no matter how much food is on the plate, if it is not digested, not adding value in the body, period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you're interested in knowing how to simulate this, how this deep down process of eating and digesting works, I can explain you, but it's not in, in this discussion of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah.
Okay. But what do you
Because
recommend?
um, the problem is most of us don't know how to know, and we are trying to get knowledge. The purpose of knowledge is not to gain the knowledge. Purpose of the knowledge is to know the information, know about the object. And in this case, it's the knowledge of the self.
Self.
The self has to know itself by itself. That's the wording of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Atman has to know the Atman by using Atman. When we know the cycle, then we can easily start assimilating the information about the Atman. What we are doing is we are trying to get the information about the Atman, but who's getting the information? Is that ego. Ego does not like Atman, ego likes itself only. You with me?
Yes.
So, as long as this entire apparatus of body, mind works for that ego, even the knowledge of the Atman becomes an instrument for this ego. It is not transforming the mind. It is becoming an instrument for the ego to be used against the mind again. So when I said we must know how to make change in ourselves, Atman has to be known by the Atman. Using the Atman in this equation, the Karan or the instrument is mind, not the ego. In this entire equation of gaining the knowledge, I use mind, never use ego. When we try to start sidelining the ego, it starts to get weaker, starts to contract, And every contraction gives me the feeling of distress, displeasure. But I know the cause of that distress, and I start ignoring the distress. It's a long cycle, it's a long discussion. Sorry.
What was an interesting one?
Yeah, the Vedanta is very interesting. And it's very conceptual. Yeah. Yeah, the old rishis were not just the knowledgeable people. They were modern age scientists and researchers.
तो अगर वेद शुरू करना हो पढ़ना तो कहाँ से शुरू किया जाए?
The Ved, there are. I'll give you an analogy here. Okay, if I wanted to live in a home which has not been used for last millions, trillions births, the first thing that I have to do is to know the pointer to the home location. Okay, that pointer comes from Prakaran Granth. After the pointer, I start traveling and I reach to the location. The next thing that I do is go inside the home and start cleaning, because the home is so dirty, very raw. That process is called Karma Yoga. When the house is clean, I cannot start living yet because there is nothing in the home to live. I start bringing furnitures and things that is useful for me to start cooking, start eating, start living, start reading, all sorts of things to support my lifestyle. That is called Upasana Yoga. When I start living well, I start building on top of that. I paint, I call friends, I create relationships from the objects in the home, and I invite similar minded people in the home. That is Bhakti Yoga. Then we do one thing, that relationships, we change this home, make it bigger, better, stronger. That we do by Jnana Yoga. When my house is stronger and I have sufficient support network by doing Bhakti Yoga, then I am ready to start reading Ved. So it's not a single life journey, but we just have to learn and know that how to know, how to gain information, how to keep that information so that in the next life I can start from there. If all the information that I have acquired is going to stay in this life, it is not much valuable. Every information as little as possible, but if it has made the permanent change in me, that is much more valuable than having so much information. None of them got me anywhere without making any change. So before we start using the apparatus of this yantra, we have to make this apparatus fit for that purpose. This apparatus is so wrong at this time by so many births of mishandling that this apparatus is not suitable at all for that purpose. This apparatus has to be corrected, and that's why We have to work on three different aspects: kaik, vachik, and mansik. The three levels addresses our gross body, subtle body, and Karan Shrir, the causal body. By slowly making this instrument suitable, working on it, this instrument becomes suitable for that higher purpose. And that higher purpose is to gain knowledge so that I can know myself. The purpose of everything here is to know Jeev, Jagat, and Jagdish. That's it. Without knowing Jeev, Jagat, and Jagdish, there is no true bhakti ever. Without Gyan, bhakti is not possible at all. That's why we try to gain to know three aspects of Bhagwan. We try to know the prabhav of the Bhagwan, we try to know the swabhav of the Bhagwan, and we try to know the swarup of the Bhagwan. Without knowing these three, prabhav, swabhav, and swarup, what am I going to do? How am I going to serve him? I don't even know him. Isn't that? And how can I know somebody if I don't know myself? How can I call somebody in my home if the home is not suitable for me to live? If my body is so corrupted and so unusable that I cannot live in here peacefully, if I am not happy in this body, how can I invite the Lord in this home? How can I expect him to be happy in this home? I am not happy in this home. Isn't that? First of all, I have to learn how to live in this home. This home is not livable at all. The purpose is to make this home livable first. And for that, I'll have to work, isn't it? I have to do karma yoga, upasana yoga after that. Then jnana yoga and bhakti yoga. When I see this instrument is fully usable and I can live in this home happily, only then I can invite my Lord to come and stay in this home happily. And I got digressed quite a lot, so leave it. Sorry.